Okay. So welcome, friends, to the first session of Saving Us, Climate Scientist Case for Hope and Healing in a Divided World by Dr. Katharine Hayhoe. I'm Tom Yamaguchi, and welcome you. I know that most of the people on the screen right now are Quakers, people I've invited from various Berkeley Quaker congregations. I see one person who I invited from the outside from Citizens Climate Lobby. And so not everybody here tonight is a Quaker, but everybody is welcome. So thank you for showing up. Our first two sessions on the book. One thing I want to say before we even get started for the Quakers here, this is not worship sharing. So that means feel free to respond to what other people are saying. And there's nothing confidential here. In fact, as I say, I'm recording this meeting, so hopefully we're going to have it posted to the Berkeley Friends Meeting YouTube channel for people to see. So feel free to talk about it with others. And in fact, that's the whole point. Dr. Hayhoe wants us to talk about climate change. So we'll be discussing that more as we go along. So even though I said this is for Quakers and non-Quakers, I'd like to actually start with a few minutes of silence, silent worship. And for people who are not Quaker, just imagine it just a few minutes of silent meditation that we can prepare our minds and hearts for the course that we're going to be charting tonight. So let us have just a few moments of silence. Okay, welcome again. First thing I want to do is call in user 1. Is that Dirk Nyhart? Dirk, are you on the line? Call in user 1.
Dirk's phone number usually shows up when he calls in.
I know. Okay. Well, call in user 1. Would you like me to rename you?
Or caller 1 is still muted.
Yes, I know. So, but hopefully call in user 1 can hear us. But,
hi, Tom, it's Dirk Nyhart, probably 1405.
Okay, Dirk, your name comes up as call in user 1. So I'm going to go ahead and rename you as Dirk.
Mr. Handsome.
What's that again?
He wants to be Mr. Handsome.
Okay, well, we'll just call you
Handsome.
Dirk for now. Okay, great.
At least that's what I thought I heard.
Yes, well, welcome, Dirk. And we were just getting started. So so we at least have one person on the phone. And so one of the things I'm going to do is ask that when people do speak, to go ahead and say your name so people on the phone can hear you. I'm also going to ask that when you want to speak, please use the raised hand icon on the Zoom. That'll make it a little easier for me. I'm still getting used to this Zoom thing, and I participate in Zoom calls, but this is the first time I'm actually in charge of stuff, so it's very daunting. But
yeah, the raise hand will make it easier because somebody raises their hand, they should move to the top of your list.
To the top, right?
So
yes.
that will be helpful.
That would be very, very, very helpful. Okay. So as I said earlier, we will be doing 2 sessions. The first session tonight, we're going to be talking about sections 1, 2, and 3, as well as the preface. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to be finishing up with sections 4 and 5. So I don't know of any other things that I should get into right now. As far as ground rules go, as I said, use the raise hand icon, state your name when you're sharing. And as far as the code of conduct, I guess you could say one of the things that, in fact, actually, I know what I was going to do. I was going to ask people how many have actually read at least part of the book. If you could use your Zoom hands, raise your Zoom hands so I can, on the Zoom screen. Let me show how everybody can know how to use the Zoom. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, 5, 6. Oh, that's really good. Okay, great. 8, 7. So we got at least about 7 people who have actually read the book. And for those of you who have not read the book.
You didn't say how big of a part.
Well, at least part of it. At least part of it. I don't know if people have gotten up through section 3, but at least you've got a taste of what the book is about.
And excuse me, Tom, this is Barb. Could you maybe just go through tell people where to find the raised hand? It's under reactions.
Oh, yeah. It's under reactions, and you just, I don't have it. Actually, I wonder if I can. Oh, actually, I was able to raise my hand.
I don't find it.
And now you can also use that reactions to lower your hand. Okay.
I don't find it.
You can't find it, huh? Okay.
Oh, here it is.
On the bottom of your screen, there's a menu that says mute, stop video, security, participants, chat, share screen, pause. Okay, live reaction.
I found it.
When you click on reactions, you'll see the rate. You'll see.
So how do we? Oh, okay. How do we lower the hand?
Yes. Okay.
How do you lower the head?
Okay, same thing. Hit the reactions button, and then hit the same thing. It says lower hand.
I don't have any lower hand.
Oh, you just.
Yeah, the button should change if you have your hand raised.
Yeah, he does have his hand raised.
Oh, okay.
Lower hand.
At the bottom of that little screen.
It says, reactions. It'll say lower hand. Raise hand and lower hand.
There's 2 different raise hand icons, which is part of the confusion.
Oh. Look at the bottom of that panel that goes all the way across. It should say either raise hand or lower hand.
Are you on a computer?
Yes. Under participants, I found it. Great. Thank you.
Okay. So you're okay. So you lowered your hand. Okay, great. Okay, terrific. Okay, well, a fair number of us have read the book, and that is good. The other thing, let's see what else I wanted to talk about. Okay. Oh, at one point, I don't know if people got this far, but she was talking about a sign that she saw at a Rotary Club. And I thought that would be very helpful for having some, if you say, ground rules. And that is, as we share tonight, there are 4 things. Is it truth? Is it fair? Does it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial? So I think if we keep that in mind, I think we could have a nice discussion. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is in the preface and also the section 1, which, let me pull up my screen as well. Section 1, which is the problem and solution. She talks about the 6 Americas of global warming. And I'm actually going to see if I can share the screen of that. Screen. Let's see. Where did it go? No. Okay, hold on a minute.
No, it's just,
let me see if I can pull it up. I'm still getting used to this shared screen thing.
If you're too tired.
okay, I'm not going to do it tonight, but
No, I didn't.
I can look at it tonight.
Okay, let me see if that'll work. So, okay, going back and forth on my share screen. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, and Hayhoe uses this also in her talks. I don't know if anybody's seen any of her talks or her webinars or read anything else for her, but this is a thing that was developed by the Yale Project for Climate Change Communication. And it talks about, as he says, the 6 Americas on global warming. As you can see, there are alarmed, concerned, cautious, disengaged, doubtful, and dismissive. And let me just pull up what that all means. The alarm group are convinced that global warming is happening, it's human caused, it's an urgent threat, and they strongly support climate policies. Most, however, do not know what to do, what they or others can do to solve the problem. The concerned think human caused global warming is happening, is a serious threat, and supports climate policies. However, they tend to believe that climate impacts are still distant in time and space, thus climate change remains a lower priority issue. The cautious haven't made up their minds yet. Is global warming happening? Is it human caused? Is it serious? Disengaged know little about global warming. They rarely or never hear about it in the media. The doubtful do not think global warming is happening, or they believe it is just a natural cycle. They do not think much about the issue or consider it a serious risk. And then finally, the dismissive. They believe global warming is not happening, human caused or a threat, and most endorse conspiracy theories, e.g., global warming is a hoax. In fact, I could go ahead and paste those in the chat, I think. Let's see. Let's see here. Where am I? Okay, where am I? Okay. All right, where am I? Come on. I'm going to I'm trying to get back to my Zoom screen. Come on. Okay. All right, where am I? Okay. Okay.
Maybe stop sharing. I don't know.
Yeah, let me stop sharing for now. And yeah, stop share. Okay, yeah, you're back. Thanks, Sarah. You're helpful. Let me go ahead and post that in the chat. And so those are the things, the Six Americas. So that's going to introduce me to what I was going, my first query or question for the night. And that is, where do you fall on the Six Americas line? And have you always been there? Did you move one way or the other? So anyone would like to share that with us? Like Sarah, did you want to tell us where you feel you fall on the Six Americas line?
Hi, this is Sarah. I actually had another comment as well, but
Sure.
I would say I'm pretty solidly over in the alarmed camp, at least now. Now I can remember even like in elementary school, I wrote a short paper about how all the animals and plants, if they could talk, would be screaming at us that their world was, killing, dying, killing them, too polluted, all this stuff. Way back when I was in elementary school, I think. So I've probably always been in that camp.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Sharon, did you?
Yes, I read the description of the categories, and I didn't think I belonged to any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would add another category, and that is terrified. And that's where I am. I've probably been there for the last 5 or 6 years. I sort of probably started out alarmed.
So terrified is beyond alarmed then?
Well, yeah. And okay. Then, but really, truly terrified.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Dorothy, did you have something?
Well, I would say pretty much the same thing. And I think I have been at least alarmed and frightened for a long time. I don't know whether it's 5 years or more like 10, but it's been a long time. Reading all you hear about how various species are threatened or practically hanging by a thread. And the sadness of it, the sadness and the anger you feel. I've been very worried and upset for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, Carl. Okay.
I'm sort of somewhere between concerned and alarmed. Or here's another way to put it. I am alarmed, but I'm also alarmed by other things. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of what's my top priority, it isn't quite my top priority, but I'm sure glad there are other folks for whom it is their top priority. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I would just add, yes.
One other thing, and that's that I have a sense of geological time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. I just added the URL for the Six Americas web page, and on there is actually a test, a very short quiz that you could take to determine actually where you fit. You answer the questions and it'll tell you where you are on that line. I'll just say for myself, I of course am alarmed, and I would say that anyone who is here probably at least concerned. Otherwise, why else would you be here? You're certainly concerned, and that's why you're here. But I guess I was actually moved from concern to alarm. And I think that that event for me happened when that one day when the sky was this weird, otherworldly red, and it was just like from all the wildfires. And then suddenly global warming wasn't that something down the road distantly, it was actually happening now. And so I say that's what moved me from the concern to the alarm. So yeah, so but you like to take that test. Now, Sarah, you said you had something else that you wanted to talk about on that section.
Well, yeah, this is Sarah. It just reading it, I was kind of amazed at the distribution, and I'm thinking if only, well, your graph said 9%, the book says 7% of the people are deniers, who I would associate with was also being kind of politically ultra conservative, politically kind of maybe aligned with Trump, so on and so forth, all his denial. If that's true, only 7 to 9%, why is everything so bad, and how on earth did he get elected? That just hit me in the face. I was like, whoa. But I was glad to see it's not, more on that side, but still. That does mean we have room to convince those who are not totally denials, which is good.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, considering how even though he lost the popular vote twice, and only got in because of the Electoral College, the fact that he did get so many votes, and he actually increased the number of votes he got in the second election. So that is definitely a cause for concern. There are so many people that really are, in that category. I think the one thing that Hayhoe mentions, is it is a shrinking number. It's gone down from, it's actually the number of dismissives are really shrinking, and the number of people in the concern and alarm are actually growing. So yeah. Joe, did you have something that you wanted to include there?
I think it's hard to stay in the alarmed group for an indefinite period of time. Which is why I think I although I just took that quiz and it says that I'm alarmed, but it's sort of easier in a long haul to be in a concerned position than an alarmed position. I mean, I'm thinking about, 50 years ago, I lived over in Mill Valley in a house kind of down in the flats. And I recall then thinking, this is not a good long-term investment because a couple of feet of sea level rise and we're going to have the ocean in our street more often than we did. That's 50 years. That's a long time to be alarmed about something.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, Louise, you're muted.
Figures.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was wondering, when was this Yale climate change communication? When was that developed? When did this come?
I think the first one was something like 2008, something like that. Let me, let's see. The most recent one was just last year, but I think, well, this lists 2017, excuse me. Yeah, 2017. And if you go down lower in the page, it'll actually show you, actually 2008, I was correct the first time. Actually, yeah, it actually shows the progression between 2008 and 2021 of how people have shifted. So it's, as I said, it's the disengaged or the dismissives have slowly been shrinking, but they're shrinking. Okay, let me get back to my screen here. Okay, great. Let's see. So yeah, so Sarah and Joe, you're finished. Sarah, you can put your hands down. Just is there anybody else that has any other things they'd like to share about? One thing she talks about is the polarization, and the fact that there was a time when people like Senator John McCain, Joe Lieberman, they were on the they were there on climate, and now it seems to be a very, very polarized. Democrats are on one side, Republicans on the other. And one other thing that also that Hayhoe says is about when you're trying to find someone to talk to, that you could say, well, what about, can we change the minds of dismissives? And the question is, there's nothing we can say that'll really change them anyway. So we might as well talk to the 93% who can, or certainly changeable, certainly that middle category, the people who are doubtful, there are people who are cautious. We can at least talk to them. And I think that's the important thing. That's one of the messages. She also refers to George Lakoff and how about framing. Is anybody familiar with George Lakoff's book or work? Just out of curiosity. Yes, Dorothy?
Don't think of an elephant.
Well, I wanted to say something else eventually. I do know about Lakoff, but I'm no expert on it.
Okay, and I'm sorry, go ahead. What did you want to talk about?
Oh, it was, well, one thing was a response to what was said before about flooding in the Mill Valley and so forth. I just, in Richmond, I listened to a Zoom lecture by Dr. Christina Hill, a professor at Berkeley, and she had this very, very fascinating lecture, which actually was quite technical, but she was such a good explainer that I felt comfortable with it. But I did not feel comfortable with the substance of it, some of which I knew already, which is that with sea rise, the polluted water, the polluted chemicals on the Richmond shore, which people seem very disinclined to get rid of. We citizens are fighting that, but excuse me. Anyway, the prospect of sea rise, which is very, very likely, would mean that that these poisonous materials would seep into people's houses. They could come up the plumbing and be in the houses, not only houses, but schools and other public buildings. And it really would be a mess, and is likely to happen. And the more one is aware of that kind of thing, and Dr. Hill was really confirming with a lot of evidence and a lot of wonderful information what we in Richmond have been aware of for a long time and have been protesting about for a long time at City Council and everywhere else, a lot of other places, excuse me. And so there is that. The other thing briefly is that it's interesting how among people who are concerned, there have been more and more and more of them. I thought, like at least one of you, that the division between the deniers and the people who are concerned or frightened was much more even. But I remember when friends of mine, a quite well-known cultural historian, a teacher, a retired teacher at Davis, English teacher, I remember her making fun of people like me I remember her saying, "What about the poor paramecium? What about the poor amoeba? Aren't we scared? Aren't we worried about them?" And nobody said anything. There wasn't a moment of silence. Nobody said, "Oh, come on, Sandra." People just went on talking, because I think even a moment of silence or some kind of response, she would have taken that as a success with her teasing. But I think there were a lot of people who felt that, and you know, we really thought some of us were very silly.
Okay. Yeah.
And people like that, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely being dismissive. Definitely dismissive. But George Lakoff wrote a book called Don't Think of an Elephant. And it's actually very, very thin, not a very thick book, rather thin book. It's a very quick, easy read. But it's really, really very good book. And I strongly recommend it. But it's sort of like showing how, you know, our, you know, facts are not generally all that persuasive. A lot of our decision making is done on emotion. And he talks about, actually gets into specifically about the current differences between Democrats and Republicans, which I found really interesting. Talked about, you know, the Democrats or the Republicans having the believing in a what they call the stern father, you know, that people are basically bad and need to be punished or do good. Where the Democrats, on the other hand, believe in the nurturing parent, and that is that people are basically good, and they just need encouragement to do good. So those are the things that Lakoff talks about. I'd like to see. Does anybody have any questions about that regarding that first section on you know on the Democrats and or the let's just say the section where she talks about opinions are not based on facts, but generally on values, ideologies, worldviews, and political orientation. So do you have any questions or ideas about that?
I was impressed by her willingness to try and talk to people who are in other categories, and her approaches of ways to persuade people to take the issue seriously. And I think it's commendable effort. It's not my effort. I want to get people from the concerned section into the terrified section. And I've been doing this, and I find myself really bored with myself, and people don't want to hear what I'm saying. So I pretty much quit saying it. And I just have one point that I'd like to make for everybody. The real consequence of what is happening will appear around 2050. I'll be dead. My grandchildren will be sort of mid-adults. And then it'll become clear to everyone. You don't have to believe in science. Science exists whether or not anybody believes in it. It's going on. It doesn't exist because we believe in it. It exists because it's a fact. And so the consequence in 2050 will be so dire that no one can ignore it. But unfortunately, at that point in time, the steps that we could be taking right now to mitigate those dire consequences are not going to be taken because there's no political will. I mean, I can't even get fellow Quakers to take it as serious as I am, as I do. So how can I expect the populace at large to take it seriously?
I see. Dorothy, did you have something else that you wanted to?
Well, I guess I forgot to remove my hand.
Oh, okay, all right.
Now that you've called on me, it seems to me I was having a response to what Sharon was saying, that people, I think people react, and that they resent you're trying to scare them. They know you're trying to scare them, and they resent that, and they may initially act very, if not hostile, at least not at all forthcoming. But they may change their minds later, and they may sit and they may think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, later in the book, she talks about how people can, feel like they're being judged or being called a bad person, and that can turn people off as well. Louise?
Yeah. She says that, really fear doesn't work as a motivating factor. And then she also says that, facts may not really make that much of an impact either, because people have their own framework of reference and they're not going to move out of it. Anyway, she says you really need to give some sense of what people can do. And so I'm looking forward. I've only gotten to the midsection there. I'm looking forward to finding out what she suggests in terms of how to communicate with people and what are the hopeful signs. I mean, that's really why I came to this thing, because the case for hope, we desperately need some hope and some way to move forward from this crisis.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is her own personal experiences, and there's a lot of anecdotes, and I've heard the stories told before. So, but yeah, a lot of it is her own personal experience, actually talking with people. And she said, she tries her best to actually communicate with a wide variety of people from all different backgrounds, even people in the oil industry, who come to her and say, hey, we're not the bad guys, we're just supplying a service that people need, George?
Well, I would just like to say that I would support Hayhoe's view that the problem for climate deniers is not so much the science, it's kind of a mix of identity issues. And my example doesn't come from climate at all. Recently, I contacted a cousin whom I hadn't seen, I hadn't really been in contact very much for 20 years, to tell her that my brother had died. And I had heard that she was an anti-vaxxer. And so I told her that even though she's an anti-vaxxer, I hope she'd be careful and didn't catch the dread virus. And she wrote back and said, yes, indeed, she was an anti-vaxxer. And let's see, how did it go? She said that she was an anti-vaxxer and that she had been involved in a network of people on email, an international network of people on email since the 9/11 disaster 20 years ago, and they had come to the conclusion that you can't trust the government, you can't trust the corporations, and the what she calls the normal media, the standard media are not to be trusted either, and they have no use for the New York Times, and the NPR are always lying. And so I wrote back to her and said that I depend very heavily on my friends for this. Well, probably we're similar in that we both wish to make logical deductions from data. And we don't really know what is reliable data. And I rely on my friends for getting reliable data, and she seems to rely on hers. And she was very friendly and agreed with me completely about that. But I haven't gotten to the next step of getting her to change her group of friends. And I can kind of sympathize with wanting a group of friends because she had a difficult childhood. Her mother was alcoholic, and she raised younger siblings who came out better than she has, I think, in terms of this. And she never married, so and she's about my age. So I'm certainly sympathetic to her, but I don't know quite how to go to the next step and get her to change her friends. But
okay.
But it seems to me that this Lakoff idea of framing and tribes is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. And one thing, we were talking about, that the limits of facts, but at one point, Hayhoe says, well, facts can work if they're removed from the, from the partisanship. Let me see if I can get to that. That you can use facts if we sidestep polarization. So it sounded to me, George, that you were doing that with her, trying to sidestep the polarization by saying something that made sense to you, made sense to her. And that way you're finding that common ground. Yeah. Sarah.
This is Sarah. I feel like I'm talking a little too much, so I'll try to be brief here.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Feel free.
I mean, I don't know what your sort of overall kind of roadmap is for the evening here, but the comment about oil companies or whatever reminds me of something. I mean, I've only gotten about 30 pages in, but something that struck me, it really touched my heart, was she's talking about things like, two aspects to it. She's talking about things like Fort Hood, actually having a large clean energy segment and contributing to the economy by hiring people to produce that clean energy. The U.S. military is calling climate change a threat multiplier. And so she talks about trigger words. So those two things together got me thinking about what are my trigger words and what are my biases coming into here. And one of them has been anti-military, anti-corporation, in spite of the fact that I end up working for big corporations in the high tech. I mean, that's not my design. That's happened to me twice now through acquisitions. But being anti-military, being anti-big corporation, but things are changing. I think even some of those people in high power places are being forced to kind of have to change their minds and rethink things. And I want to tell just a really brief little story. I had a coworker at one point who, he's still around and we're still kind of friends, not working together, but he fishes for salmon. Mostly for salmon. I think he does some other kind of stuff like that, but the salmon is the one I knew about. And I kind of always assumed that he would not be an environmentalist, that he'd be kind of just, I want to go out and kill all living things and I don't care, But he corrected me, and quite gently, but he told me, no, those of us who are doing these kinds of sports are very concerned about preserving the environment, about making sure that our waterways stay clean, the fish population is healthy and thriving, so on and so forth. So, I mean, this bridging the divide and working across the aisles kind of thing is very powerful. I think it's so important here and a lot of the other problems that are facing our society right now, the political divide, all the isms, right? Anyway, off my soapbox. Sorry.
Okay, and she uses an example of Ducks Unlimited. So hunting and fishing and whatever they do. There's that common thing they want of preservation. Yeah, Joe, did you have something?
Well, yeah, a couple things. I think it's maybe not good to too much think about this in terms of liberal conservative or those kinds of alignments, shifts and interest in organization shift. I'm thinking that traditionally the Sierra Club was a good Republican organization. And Teddy Roosevelt was certainly I mean, so those things shift. Is that, you know, I think it's important to remember that the kind of denier position is an extremely attractive position because, you know, there's things we really like, you know, like to be able to get in an airplane whenever we want to do that. And it's a whole lot easier to do that if you're can just kind of say, well, you know, this is not really a problem and it's not, you know, my getting in the airplane is, doesn't really present any issues. So I think some sympathy is in order.
Oh, sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Welcome, Katharine. Anyway, great. I was develop some other queries. I don't know how successful they will be, but I think I'll try them out anyway. One on this one is, I was thinking of currently that the cost of gasoline is the focus of the current energy debate. What would you say to someone who argues for lower gasoline prices? And what would you say if they blame President Biden for the high prices? And what did you say if they were to demand we build the Keystone XL pipeline? Would anybody like to have a response to that, about responses to the current high energy costs or gasoline?
Have you been peeking on my Facebook feed?
What's that again?
I said, have you been peeking on my Facebook feed? Because that's all kinds of stuff about that all on my Facebook feed these days.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts about that? No?
Wait.
We can hear you, Lucinda.
Oh, thanks. I was just trying to find on my Nextdoor feed, that question came up and someone, about what can you, or it's a response to people complaining about the rise of gas prices. And he methodically has, if someone else wants to speak while I find it, I can pause, but it's a nice reply.
Well, you can just summarize if you can.
It's sort of, he if you drive this many miles a year, and if he goes from the big picture, finally breaks it down to how much you might be spending per day. And then compares it to, would you really want the prices to rise in face of what's going on? Would you really prefer to be using Russian, to be receiving your gas from Russian sources? He puts, so he has a very big picture, and it's said just as a question, would you really, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm so.
That's okay, that's all right. Carl, do you have something?
Well, just to say that the current rise in gasoline prices is, I hope, a shorter term thing related very closely to the Ukraine crisis. It isn't being driven by other aspects of supply and demand. It's being driven by how big an impact the Ukraine crisis is having. But I can say much more, but there's another topic I want to talk about, which is a different question, which I'd like to raise, but not now.
Okay, all right. All right, how about you, George?
Well, if someone complained about recent increase in gas prices, I have two responses. One is possibly you could save some money if you switch to an electric car. And two, painful as it is to pay for more gas, it might be more painful if you were in Kyiv right now being shelled, which is the reason why you're paying more for gas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And Dorothy, how about you?
I was thinking that, you could make an analogy with other things. I mean, there are a lot of things that have gotten very expensive or very hard to get over the last few months because of, the way transportation has been and the economy has been.
Yeah, the supply chain, yeah.
Supply, yes, thank you. I had this problem with buying a used car, which was practically impossible, or people told me it was impossible. But there are other things too. And what I was trying to sort of analogize was electricity and gas and how expensive they are. The last time I looked at my PG&E bill, I thought either I'm crazy or this can't be. And other people have been having the same reaction on, I guess, Nextdoor and places like that. But anyway, maybe instead of the short-term problem of the gasoline, we should be talking about these other things, the energy. Mm-hmm. And how do we feel about that, and how the prices have gone up and so forth? Am I making my point?
Yeah, mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah.
If you think in terms of energy, which we all, we may be able to avoid driving our cars, some of us, but we can't really avoid heating our homes or cooking or the like. And are we going to say, well, it's just as well, we'll be less prodigal with our energy, or what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like to go ahead and sort of move on to the next section where she talks about values, and the section that says who I am. And this is when one thing, this is where she talks about the Rotary Club, the sign. Is it truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will build goodwill and better friendships, and will be beneficial to all concerned. And so she even talks more about her own Christianity and how that fits in the debate. And so I was thinking that one question I would like to bring is, what values do you bring to the climate discussion? So Eddie would like to talk about their own values that they bring when they talk about climate change.
Yeah, I have a value for knowing a lot and relying a lot on things like science.
Okay, you value science.
And some people do and some people don't. But that, again, isn't the main point that I'd like to raise. So I'll shut up for now.
Okay, actually, Carl, then I think about, you said you had a point. Did you want to go ahead and make that point while it's on your mind?
Yeah. Hayhoe, her idea of how we allocate the pain, and there will be pain. She maybe doesn't call it that, but I'm comfortable with calling it that. Mm-hmm. Of doing the shift. If you're doing something serious about the climate, you are taking pain earlier, even though you're not taking as much pain. It'll get a whole lot worse. But if you do something real about it now, then the cost comes up now. There are two different ways to approach the climate crisis. And one of them is Hayhoe's, and it's supported by economic theory. And that is to rely very much on market forces and people who derive benefit from consuming a lot of fossil fuel or having other people consume a lot of fossil fuel will suffer more than those who do not have those sources. So that is important in Hayhoe's argument of trying to simplify the degree of economic changes that a lot of people will face. The other approach is to talk about environmental justice. And it's certainly true that poor people are going to suffer a whole lot worse than rich people due to the consequences of environmental deterioration, starvation, those kinds of things. But that requires a bigger shift of who bears the burden onto the rich people. And globally, I am definitely a rich person.
Yes. Yep, that's true.
And so I get that. I'm still for it anyway, but a lot of rich people aren't.
Yeah, that's true.
And for us to figure out how these two approaches can try to respect each other, even though they're going to collide with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So one of Hayhoe's concerns as a Christian is concern for the poor, and so that's one of the values that she brings to the debate.
Her idea of Christianity isn't all that conservative for Christians.
That's true. That's very true. Sharon, did you have something?
Yes, I was very much taken by the title of her book, Hope. I've been very influenced by David Wallace Wells, who wrote the book, The Uninhabitable Earth. I don't believe the nations of this world will find the political will to take the steps that are necessary to avoid the terrible consequences. So I've gone through this whole process of grieving, denial, acceptance, and really now I think it's impossible to live without hope. And all of this is very personal for me. This is how my particular journey to accept the dire consequence, which I believe will occur, and still somehow find a way to find hope. And that may be very close to my spiritual life, that it's not possible to live without hope. That all these things that I think are going to happen, there will be some goodness, there will something we can save out of what will occur, I would say, by 2050. And that's this question of hope. Even though it's going to be an uninhabitable world, I've got to believe that there is some way that we can hope for something, some of our humanity to survive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good point. Joe?
Yeah, I agree about the need for hope. I think there's a danger in becoming too pessimistic. For a long time, we were confronted with the inevitability of overpopulation doing us in, and overpopulation is still a problem, but birth rates around the world have plummeted, and there's little sign that's going to stop. People can respond to a potential crisis in a positive way. Mm-hmm. I'm also a little bit about always talking about this in terms of how much pain we're going to have to endure in order to deal with the issue. I have one daughter who drives a Tesla and another one who's got one on order. And I don't know any Tesla drivers who don't say that, this is a whole lot more fun than what I had before. Some of the corrections are not at all painful, or for that matter, I was raised in Southern California where you could, it was good for a paranoid because you could see the air you were breathing constantly and knew it was there. But, and you go to Southern California now and you can't see the air you're breathing anymore. I think there is hope. Now, it takes a lot of will, but you can, I think it's not worth giving up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Dirk, you have something to share with us?
Yeah. Your challenge was, what are the values that we are presenting? And mm-hmm. I have three thoughts here. One is a sociological thought. The value, for me at least, is to make every environment I'm in better with my presence. And corollary of that is do unto others and to other sentient things what you would have them do unto you. And that's think about the philosophy, the logic of it, where we are constrained by what our scientists tell us and what our scientists in different fields tell us is mitigating things we can do to, I don't think really mitigate, but at any rate, lessen the impact of our beings of the 21st century. And the last question is the spiritual value. What spiritual value am I presenting to the challenge of climate change? And I am thinking that what makes me whole as a person is feeling that I belong in this world, and what makes me alienated is feeling that I am hopeless, that I don't belong. So I do agree that having hope is a worthwhile thing, but I disagree that we should put too much reliance on hope and more reliance on action. Mm-hmm. That's all.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you very much. Let's see. Well, it's about 20 minutes after, or I say 10 minutes after 8. I was thinking that this session would probably be an hour and a half, and because I don't want to, take up too much of people's nights. So, but I do want to go ahead and move along to some of these other sections. One thing that she was also talking about is about how, about knowing your audience. And so I came up with a question of what audiences would you feel comfortable talking to about climate change? And who would you not feel less comfortable, but might be able to find some kind of common ground? So let's just say you being a conservative Republican who is not sure climate change is happening or if humans are causing it, making them in a doubtful category. How would you engage, see yourself engaging in that conversation? Any ideas on that one? Mm-hmm. No.
I have an idea, but I talk too much.
Go ahead. Go ahead. It might inspire somebody else.
And that is, and Quakers are better at this than most people, on average. And that is to listen respectfully to people you disagree with. And if people learn that they can respectfully disagree, that is a really valuable step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts about that? Barb, did you have something?
Yeah, I really appreciate her style in that she tells stories in such a way that it's approachable and easy to understand. I am in the alarmist group, and I've talked to a few people about it, and it seems like the whole fact dump doesn't work. Yeah. I've been to workshops, I've read articles, I've read it all. I mean, not all of it, but I've read a lot, and that kind of doom and gloom thing just doesn't work. No. For me personally. I'm just speaking from my heart here. But the part that I found especially valuable today was when I was reading her analogy of comparing it to getting lung cancer. Mm-hmm. So if it takes 2,000 cigarettes to be, it's not like you can smoke and smoke and smoke and all of a sudden you reach the 2,000th cigarette and then all of a sudden you get lung cancer, right? It's the same with climate control, right? Everything we've done for the past however many, several hundred years has been building up to this. And so, approaching it in such a way that people understand that, because I think that especially a lot of people I know in North Carolina that are in denial just feel like it's somebody else's problem. Right? And, it's not me. I've got to just turn on my air conditioner and drive my SUV and, who cares? So I have a lot to learn about it, but I think that her style is much more approachable than anything I've read to date.
Okay, great. And Dorothy?
Yes, well, I haven't talked to that many dyed-in-the-wool deniers and Republicans of that sort, but I was thinking again of the rising seas, which, and that is something that one hears a great deal about. That's in the Pacific Islands or in Miami, the flooded streets. And right. Then instances like the one I mentioned before about Richmond. I feel as though you people and Barb and the rest of you could say, yes, but then people are going to say, well, that's their problem. And it might not work. But I guess I would try that first. I really do like the author's suggestion. You find something that people really do have in common. But like I don't know, sport fishing or whatever, hunting. But I would try the rising seas, which is a good specific one. And it does seem to be happening all over the place. And I would think I could get some people to admit that that is a problem.
Yeah. when you mentioned that, I was thinking of another section of that I really liked is when she was talking to this one scientist who said he was going to go out and talk to religious organizations about climate change. And in the conversation, he admitted he was an atheist. Her advice was, stop. You don't want to
find another audience.
You know, and that's why she found another interest of his that he could go, groups that he could go where he could make that common bound. So I thought that was a amusing part of the book. Louise, did you have something? Oh.
Have to unmute myself. Yeah, I totally agree with Barb, what she said. I think the book is very approachable, very humorous in many respects. I really am enjoying it, and I appreciate your bringing it to our attention, Tom. Mm-hmm. I was wondering about the UN climate report. If anyone has gotten a hold of that and how much that would be helpful to this conversation. I assume it's something voluminous and maybe hard to read, but I haven't checked it out. But I have heard, you know, some things about it on the radio, TV, and so forth. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, the other thing is my daughter is an energy consultant, and she said everybody should just paint their roofs white, and it would help a huge amount. And that's something simple we could do. So we could start a little revolution of painting our roof white, which would reflect back the sun. So there are simple things that can be done, that are being done, that, you know, maybe don't get that much attention. You know, regenerative agriculture is on the rise. That farmers are finding that the old way of doing things is not, you know, it's not very economical. So anyway, I just look for solutions, and glad to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Sharon.
The reports, the international, what is the panel on international?
Yeah, the IPCC.
Yes. They always have an executive summary, which for lawmakers or policymakers, and that is usually far more accessible and easier to read and summarizes the technical findings. You would also find that climate.nasa is a very useful site, which is very easy to read, and actually does have a list of an update, a scoreboard for very important elements of the global climate change. And they'll have a lot of useful articles. These are objective, scientifically written based articles, and will help you keep informed as to what is going on.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, I have not read the latest IPCC report, but I intend to do so when I get a chance. But you're right. The executive summary does is very readable and understandable, and definitely a red alert, as they say. Okay, great. I want to move on to some other things before we close. One thing that that struck me as interesting is this quote from Ronald Reagan. This is in the section "Facts Are Facts," and it says, Ronald Reagan said, "If you are explaining, you're losing." And I was wondering if anyone can think of situations where they found themselves losing by explaining. And I have something that I have thought of, but I'd like to see if there's anybody else that has something. You know, do you even agree with it? If you're explaining, you're losing. Well, one thing that I thought of when I saw that was thinking about the slogan, defund the police. And Carl?
Oh, actually, senior moment. I'm go on to somebody else.
Well, let me go ahead and complete my thought, and that is, you know, when Biden gave his State of the Union address, he specifically said, "I do not want to defund the police," and that's been something that I've been thinking of relating to Reagan's statement. I've heard lots of people explaining, no, we don't mean this. We want to, we're just saying that we want to take that money and give it to other social groups. And once we explain that, everybody will understand and we'll get what we want. But unfortunately, what it looks like is that the Republicans have latched onto it and say, the Democrats want to abolish the police. And that's the frame that's sort of sticking in people's minds. And so I can understand why Biden is saying, I don't want to defund the police. I'm just wondering if other people agree with that or have some other perspectives. Any thoughts? Carl, your hand is still up. I don't know if you still...
I thought of the point I was trying to make.
Yeah. Sure.
And that is Reagan's quote of, if you have to explain something, you're losing. In many cases, that's true. But in some cases, I can actually help by explaining. And so I'm pretty good at explaining, if maybe not as good as I think I am at explaining, but people who don't want to be explained to, I have a hard time communicating with.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point was, if the explanation is too abstract, or an even better idea is, if your opponents define it opposite of what you're trying to explain, it's up in a way that, once again, connects with people with their own values. I mean, when people hear, abolish, defund the police, connect it to abolish the police, that means that we'll have anarchy. There'll be lots of crime and violence and such like that. And so it brings up a lot of emotional connections that we don't want to be, to people to have. When we say defund the police, we're not talking about a lawless society, but unfortunately, the slogan itself sends that message. And so, as I said, I'm throwing that out to see if people agree with that. Sarah?
Yeah, this is Sarah. This isn't really specifically on your question, but the whole concept brings to mind something I've been thinking of since I started this reading, which is, so she's talking quite a bit about how the power of the anecdotal story and the personal connection, which is very, accurate and true. I think there's a lot of power there. And sometimes people get either just discouraged or just overwhelmed if you try to push, facts and data at them. That's all true. But there's kind of, I think, kind of a flip side to that, which is kind of probably this defund the police topic shows it up the best for me. It's like every time, like on Nextdoor or other social media, when somebody posts something about some crime or bad thing that happens, and there's immediately at least 2 or 3 people, if not more, who respond and say, well, thank you, Stanley Andrew, for reducing our police force, and gee, don't you really want to vote in these people who want to reduce police, all these kinds of reactions, right? That seems like that's kind of the other side of the anecdotal thing that can work against the positive change we're trying to make. Maybe it's not so bad with climate change because there are so many anecdotes now on the other side of people whose homes are lost, whose livelihoods are lost, the economic impact that it's bad enough. But yeah, I kind of see a flip side of the whole anecdotal thing where anecdotes can work on the other side too.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
To amplify that other message.
Right. Exactly. Dorothy?
Yes, well, I read that Reagan remark and was struck by it, but I was a teacher for 50 years, and and I kept thinking that as a teacher, it horrified me. But then, of course, there are teachers who over-explain, and as a teacher, I think you often have to ask yourself, am I really making this clear? Or am I over explaining and am I boring people by saying they're thinking, we get it. Or am I putting people off in any way? Am I doing this well? So I found myself really searching after I read that. Mm-hmm. I must say that one of you was saying that that he found it difficult. I think this is how I understood it, to explain or to talk to people who were very, very much opposed to what he thought, who found it very difficult to accept him. And I must say, I find that most people that I talk to in this serious way are people who are going to listen, whether they agree or not, and they're going to consider most of the time. So I find that explaining in various aspects of my life works, but then I guess there are places where it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. George?
Oh, it seems to me that this quotation from Reagan, if you were explaining, you were losing, probably refers to a kind of situation where you're confronting someone that has a different frame from you, a different kind of emotional or different structure that determines how you look at the world. And I remember that Reagan once was confronted, gave a speech, in fact, where he would have been caught in some bad behavior with Iran-Contra affair. I don't remember the details, but I think he was supposed to have misused funds that were intended for one thing for something else. Mm-hmm. And instead of trying to explain what had happened, he said, "This sounds absolutely awful. I'm very ignorant about this. I'm going to look into this and I will find out and I will correct the problem." And he managed to somehow try to position himself from the same position as the people who are criticizing him. And I think it was rather effective. I must say, I think his quotation is maybe a little bit cynical of how politicians operate. Instead of explaining themselves, they try to figure out some way of getting on the same side as their enemies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then I guess if we're crusaders for mitigating climate change, we are a little bit in the position of a politician if we're going out trying to persuade people that don't care about climate change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Carl, did you have something else too? Okay.
Yeah, and that's that if you want to go and find people who want to abolish the police, you can find them. Mm-hmm. That is their belief. And for that matter, us liberals to progressives to et cetera, do the same thing. we look at a good example of this is okay, there is a huge anti-abortion movement in the United States, and politically very effective, and some of that movement is literally murderous. And, you know, there are people who go around shooting people because these are murderers and should be shot. And if nobody else is going to shoot them, I'm going to shoot them. And people who are concerned about abortion rights may dig up that kind of story, which is a true story, and use it to discredit the whole anti-abortion movement. So, yeah, this is just the way some people are.
Right. Okay. Great. Well, we're getting towards the end of the section, and I think what I'm going to do is the section 3. I think I'm going to leave till next week because I had some other ideas on that, but I did want to close with some other thing that one last query for the night, and that's regarding another person we could say is a concerned person who will say, I know climate change is real and I need to use less fuel, but I have a family and a job that require me to own a car. I can't ride a bike or afford an electric car. So what do you say to that concerned person? And I'll just say that question is inspired by, I went to a community meeting last night regarding the in fact, Dirk was at that meeting of developing housing at the North Berkeley, and Joe Magruder, yeah, he were at the meeting too, developing housing at the North Berkeley and Ashby BART station parking lots. And that was a very common response, you know, and as they said, it was concerned, I know climate change is real, I want to use less fuel, but I need to drive a car. And I was just wondering, given what we've been talking about, what kind of response would you give to that person? Sarah.
I think I would say to that person that I hear you. I think that we all have to start wherever we're at. We all can do something. Maybe it's not driving less, maybe it's using less electricity and putting in, you know, energy efficient light bulbs in our house can help, or insulating our house can help. If you know, there's things all of us can do. And then the other thing that we all can do, I know it seems like kind of urgent to really be thinking this way, but I think we have to think this way, is to look to the future and, you know, try to attend things like this meeting you're talking about. Try to advocate for the kinds of societal structural changes that would allow the population overall to drive less. Better public transportation, better connections between housing and jobs. So we don't have to drive, or at least don't have to drive so much to commute. The other thing is, so maybe you have to drive during the week to commute, but if you're going for a few things at the grocery store and it's maybe, you know, half a mile or less down the road or something, consider walking around your neighborhood to do those kinds of errands sometimes instead of driving. There are things you can do. I think that would be my point.
Good. Katharine.
First of all, I just want to say that I agree with you about the defund the police stuff. That's the reason that Biden said that.
Could you speak up, Catherine?
Oh, sorry. I said, first of all, I agree with you about why Biden said he wasn't for defunding the police. So doesn't want to trigger a lot of people or triggerable. You know, I guess I've dealt with this very specific issue in when I worked in the Central Valley, and I was driving sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours to reach a client who I needed to visit on a weekly basis. And through, it was a nonprofit, and they, anyway, and then I also had to commute to the Bay Area, and there were about 6 of us commuting from the Central Valley, all our own cars. And it just seems so ridiculous. So I don't know, I just opened a discussion with my employer about the fact that we have sick kids we're serving, and we're contributing to what's making them sick by all this driving we're doing. And so we came up with some things where we, instead of visiting every week, we visited every other week or once a month for longer sessions where you could do more with them, and actually that actually improved things a bit. And we started taking the train to our monthly meetings in the city. But it did take the courage to open the discussion with my employer and to try and come up with some creative solutions myself before I had that discussion with them. So that's just, and I know that a lot of businesses, they're not interested in all that, but I get that. But I think it could be a starting place for a discussion, Yeah, that's all I have to say on that one. Yeah.
Well, it gets back to what Tay was saying from the very beginning. What is the single most effective thing we could do respond to the climate crisis, and that's talking about it. Because if you don't bring it up, then you can't arrive at these solutions. As you say, changing the way the way the meetings are held, the frequency. Maybe they can be done on Zoom. Maybe maybe you could do a carpool where if you're going to the same area, you can go to different places with one car. But
the train was great because we could have a meeting.
Yeah.
Also had a meeting on the train.
You see.
So we
and one of the things that Hayhoe also talks about in reducing her own carbon footprint for travel is scheduling meetings so that so she has an itinerary where she's can do so much more on one trip, where she's focused on doing, as I said, going to several places on one trip instead of back and forth and back and forth. So yeah. Okay. I see we're going to we're having people starting to drop off. So I think this is a good chance or good opportunity. As I said, I'd like to talk about Section 3, but I think I'm going to leave that for next week. I really appreciate everybody's participation, and thanks for your indulgence. This is the first time I've done anything like this. And so naturally, it's sort of trying to figure out, what works and what doesn't. And so really appreciate you being a part of this experiment. And hopefully we'll get this up on YouTube. I'll be working with Jeannie to do that. But I'd like to close with a couple of more moments of silence.
I believe the next meeting is in 2 weeks. Is that right?
2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks from today. Okay, friends, thanks again. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Thank you, everyone. Have a